So let's go ahead and just start our discussion about the Arctic and Antarctica. I'll publish my first question for you guys. Where is the Arctic? Go ahead and make that guess first. Where is the Arctic? Is it in the North Pole or the South Pole? All right, so the answer is the North Pole. So the North Pole is where the Arctic is located. So the Arctic is located on the top of our planet. The Arctic includes parts of Russia, Alaska, Canada, and Greenland. Before I move on, let me ask you another poll question. Is the Arctic a continent? If you just listen to what I just said, should be a fairly easy guess. Is the Arctic a continent? Yes or no? All right, so guys, the Arctic is not a continent. Again, it is not a continent, but it includes parts of Russia, Alaska, Canada, and Greenland. So it includes other countries. It is an ocean, but it's an ocean covered in ice that extends onto those other countries. So again, guys, the Arctic is not a continent. It is a sea of ice that extends onto land, onto Russia, Alaska, Canada, and Greenland. Okay. Hold on a second. So the land of the Arctic is around the edges of the Arctic Circle. So the edges of the Arctic Circle is what actually is the land. Again, the center is the ocean. And it is what we call a tundra. So a tundra is a cold, almost treeless, plain covered area with some moss and grass-like plants, which we'll get into. The word Arctic actually comes from a Greek word for that means bear. So the word Arctic comes from the Greek language for the word bear. The North Pole aims at the stars called the Great Bear and the Little Bear. And it can actually get to over 50 degrees in the Arctic. So a little bit more about a tundra. So tundras do not get very much rain or snow. They do get very wet in the summertime because about 3 feet or 1 meter or so below the surface, the ground is always frozen. So in the summertime, it'll start to melt away and then it'll get very wet. We have what we call permafrost, which is a layer of ice that is very, very hard and keeps the water from soaking in below. And they can have permafrost that can be thousands of feet thick. Now we call this area the land of the midnight sun. So in the summertime, they'll actually have nights where the sun never sets. So it'll be sunlight the entire day. So they call it the land of the midnight sun. And that's because in the summer, the North Pole points towards the sun. Again, guys, it is a sea of ice surrounded by land. It extends to 6 different countries. Its highest mountain in the Arctic is actually located on Greenland. I'm gonna probably say this name incorrectly, but it's called Mount Gunnbjorn, and it's 12,120 feet, or Gunnbjorn, if you will. So Greenland has the highest mountain called Mount Gunnbjorn, and it is 12,000 feet approximately. All right, so here's another question for you guys. Do people live in the Arctic? Yes or no? All right, so the answer is yes. People do live in the Arctic. There are actually indigenous people that live in the Arctic. Because remember, guys, it occupies 6 different countries. So we have the indigenous people of North American Arctic, and that includes the Eskimos. We've got Canada's Arctic people, generally preferred the term Inuit, if I'm not mistaken. I know that we have some people from Canada watching, so if I'm wrong on that term, let me know. We also have the Arctic indigenous peoples located near Finland, which are called the Samis. And all the countries that I mentioned, so Russia as well, they have indigenous peoples that live in the Arctic. The only country that doesn't have indigenous peoples in the Arctic is Iceland. And again, that's only that Iceland doesn't have indigenous peoples living in the Arctic. All right, so let's move on and talk about their plants. So guys, it's very cold there. There's not a lot of plants there. There's definitely not a lot of trees. There's barely any trees in the Arctic. But they do get bright colored flowers during their very short and summertime. But the plants have very short stems, and they have to stay close to the ground because the earth or the ground is actually warmer than the winds that are howling through the Arctic. So the winds are very cold, so if there's any plants, they have to stay really, really short so they can stay warmer towards the ground than with the wind. Some of the rocks have plants growing on them. These little plants are called lichens. So lichens will grow on these bare rocks. They're actually a very good food source for a lot of the little animals that live in the Arctic. Trees are very rare, and berries are the only fruit that grows in the Arctic. Now, there are a lot of different animals that live in the Arctic. Are there penguins in the Arctic? All right, so the answer is no, there are not penguins in the Arctic. They live in Antarctica. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. So there are no penguins in the Arctic. We do have things like bison, moose, polar bears. So polar bears we have in the Arctic. We have narwhals, we have eagles, we have walruses, we have reindeer, we have caribou, we have different whales and other types of seabirds, but we do not have penguins there. So guys, let's talk a little bit about the polar bear first. So I'll find you guys a photo so you can look at it. I assume you guys all know what a polar bear looks like, but I'll still show you a fun fact. Guys, polar bears are only found in the Arctic area. They are not in the Antarctic. So here's a picture of some polar bears. The polar bear is the world's largest meat-eating land animal. The polar bears are well adapted to hunt seals on the ice. So they hunt seals on the ice. They wait by the breathing holes. So seals actually have little breathing holes where they can pop up to take a breath. Let's see, there you go. And when that seal comes up to take a breath, that's when the polar bear will hunt it. They can also break through thinner ice. So I don't know if you guys have ever watched any like Our Planet, any of those like Planet Earth documentaries. A lot of them, when they focus on the Arctic, they show videos of the polar bears jumping onto the thinner ice to break it through. They have a very strong sense of smell, and that's how they can find their prey on this icy area. And what they do is they have to eat as much as they can and store up as much fat as possible before the ice melts away, because they cannot easily catch seals in open water. It's very hard for them to do, so they need the ice to hunt. Females will also dig themselves into a den of snow on land for the rest of the winter to hibernate. And females will usually have twin cubs, so they'll usually have a pair of babies. All right, now we have the Arctic fox. So the Arctic fox we have in the Arctic as well. We don't have it in Antarctica. The Arctic fox is a hardy animal that can survive really, really cold temperatures. It has very furry feet, short ears, and a short muzzle, which helps them adapt to the very cold climate. They also live in burrows, and in a blizzard, they may tunnel into the snow to create shelter. I was reading that an Arctic fox's burrow can have 100 different entrances. Now we've also got caribou. So caribou is related to a reindeer. They also live in the Arctic. They are found mostly in North America, and caribou especially are larger than reindeer. What they do is when the fall comes, they'll actually move south out of the main part of the Arctic for it to be able to feed. And they dig through the snow with really sharp hooves for food. So they have really sharp hooves that help them dig through the snow. And they also have hollow fur, and it helps create a cushion of air around them. So their fur, between their fur and their skin, there's a little gap of air, and that air stays really warm. Think of like a wetsuit. When you wear a wetsuit in the ocean, it's kind of like that, but with air. And they keep the air warm close to their body, and they capture it in with their fur. And then we also have the narwhals. The narwhals are really cool looking animals. The narwhal looks like a cross between a whale and a unicorn. Some people call it the unicorn. It has a long spiraled tusk jutting from its head. So the males mostly have the tusks, and sometimes they may even have two. The tusk can grow as long as 10 feet, and it's actually just an enlarged tooth. So I will show you guys a picture of a narwhal really quickly, because they're really cool looking animals. Narwhal. So this is what a narwhal looks like. You can see that tooth out in the front. So that tooth again can get to be 10 feet long. And some researchers actually think that they have 10 million nerve endings inside that tusk. Now they breathe by using cracks in the ice, so they'll come up to take a little breath through a crack of ice. And they feed mostly on the Greenland halibut and other fish, squid, and shrimp. Okay, so now let's move on to Antarctica. Where is Antarctica? Is it the North or the South Pole. Okay, guys, so the answer is the South Pole. So the Arctic is in the North Pole. Antarctica is the South Pole, so it's on the bottom. All right, and now let me ask you this next question to kind of go along with what we did a little earlier. Is Antarctica a country or a continent? Which one? Is Antarctica a country or a continent? All right, good guys. The answer is Antarctica is a continent. It is not a country. And it is actually not even owned by one single country. And we'll get into that in a little bit. So Antarctica is in the South Pole. It is the 5th largest continent on the planet. It is almost double the size of Australia. It is a continent. 98% of it is covered by ice. So again, guys, it is a continent covered in ice. And on average, that ice is about 6,000 feet deep. So it's pretty large amounts of ice. The more inland ice sheets can be about 13,000 feet thick. The highest point in Antarctica is Mount Vinson at 16,000 feet. So Mount Vinson is the highest mountain in Antarctica. It is 16,000 feet. Antarctica contains more than 90% of the world's ice and more than 90% of our planet's fresh water. It is also the windiest place on Earth and has the coldest temperature record with 129 degrees, negative 129 degrees Fahrenheit. Sorry, guys. So the coldest temperature, negative 129 degrees Fahrenheit, and their winds can reach 200 miles per hour. It is also the driest continent of all continents. It's essentially a very icy desert. So people do live in Antarctica, but there are no indigenous people in Antarctica. There are no people that ever live there naturally in any time. So the people that do live there are scientists, visiting scientists that are there to learn more about the ecosystem. Antarctica is actually the least populated continent. No one lives there permanently. There's only about 1,000 people on that continent in the wintertime, and they have about 10,000 people there in the summertime. And people there usually live there for a year to work on their different research, whether they're researching seabirds or climate change, things like that. Now, here's the cool thing. There are actually 18 countries who regularly send different scientists and researchers to the science research stations in Antarctica. So about 18 countries do research there. Their largest research station is McMurdo Station, and they have about 1,000 scientists working there on any given time. Now, there's something called the Antarctic Treaty, which is very important to know. So the Antarctic Treaty came into play in about 1961 and is signed by 53 different countries. So 53 countries signed the Antarctic Treaty, and it regulates relations between all countries and scientific things going on in Antarctica. So Article 1, for an example of this treaty, states that the area is to be used for peaceful purposes only. So the treaty pretty much says that there cannot be war in Antarctica. It can only be used for scientific research, peaceful things. You're not going to be developing it, things like that. And again, that is signed by 53 different countries. So that is a really, really cool thing. All right, now let's move on to talking about the animals. So let me ask you this last poll question of mine. Are there polar bears in Antarctica? All right, guys, so the answer is no. There are not polar bears in Antarctica. There are no polar bears in Antarctica. Polar bears are in the Arctic, all right? So there are no polar bears in Antarctica. They're in the Arctic. All right, so let's talk about some animals. So remember, guys, there are no penguins in the Arctic, but they're in Antarctic. So the penguins, let's talk about them. The first one we have is the emperor penguin. Okay, so this is the emperor penguin. The emperor penguins are the tallest and heaviest of all penguin species. They grow to be over 48 inches tall and can weigh 100 pounds. They feed on krill, fish, and squid. Now, these colonies on Antarctica can contain thousands of penguins. There are other species of penguins that live in Antarctica as well. There are actually 17 different species that live in the southern hemisphere. 11 of them are listed as vulnerable or endangered, so that's not great. But the penguin species that are native to Antarctica include the emperor penguin, the king penguin, the chinstrap penguin, the Adelie penguin, the gentoo penguin, and the macaroni penguins. So those are some different penguins that live in Antarctica. Now we have other seabirds. So we have albatrosses, which you guys learned about in our seabird lesson. So we have albatrosses, which are a family of large seabirds with a long lifespan. They can live over 50 years, about 22 species. And then we have the snow petrel. So I'll show you guys a picture of the snow petrel. So the snow petrel, it's very, very white bird. This is it right here. So that's a snow petrel. They're one of only 3 seabirds that breed exclusively in Antarctica. So that means that this and 2 other bird species are the only ones that will actually breed only in Antarctica. All right, then we also have this other seabird. This one is a really cool one. I'm going to show you a photo of it too. All right, so this one is called the imperial shag. It's actually a type of cormorant. Guys, we did talk about cormorants in our seabird lesson as well. Can you guys see that? Oh, there we go. There we go. That's the imperial shag. Okay, so it's a type of cormorant, and it also lives in Antarctica. It's the only Antarctic seabird to maintain a nest year-round, so it has nests year-round in Antarctica. Now we also have elephant seals. So elephant seals are a mammal. They're a type of seal, and they are named this because they have a large elephant-like structure on their face. So the males have this elephant-like structure. So I will show you a photo of these as well. Now there are 2 main species of elephant seals. There are the northern elephant seals that you can find in California, and then we have the southern elephant seals that we can find in Antarctica. So here's a picture of the elephant seal. Again, if you've watched Our Planet or Planet Earth or any of those documentaries, you've probably seen some videos of those guys. So the southern elephant seals are the largest of all seals. The males can be over 20 feet long and weigh over 8,000 pounds. They actually migrate in search of food, and they can dive very, very deep. So elephant seals can dive to 1,000 meters or 3,000 feet deep for 20 minutes at a time. And the reason they can stay so deep and get so deep in the water is because they actually exhale before they go underwater. So before they dive down, they exhale and get rid of all these extra bubbles and gases in their body. So that way they don't hurt themselves. If you guys have done scuba diving at all before, you know that people can get really sick from diving because of all the built up gas that ends up in their body. So the elephant seals will actually exhale, take a deep, big breath out, go before they dive really deep. They also have really high levels of hemoglobin in their body, and that's what stores oxygen. So they have high levels of hemoglobin that stores extra oxygen in their blood and gives their muscles extra oxygen. So these elephant seals have twice the volume of blood than land animals of the same size. So elephant seals have a lot of blood, and they can also slow their heartbeat down. They can slow their heartbeat to about 5 beats per minute. That's pretty crazy. All right, the next that I want to talk about are some different whales and dolphins that they have in Antarctica. So we have the hourglass dolphin. So the hourglass dolphin is a really interesting looking dolphin, and it's called this because of the design on its body. So here we go. Here is a really cool photo of an hourglass dolphin. You see that right there? That is a picture of an hourglass dolphin. It is the only small dolphin species found in Antarctica. There's about 144,000 hourglass dolphins in Antarctica. We also have the minke whale. So the Antarctic minke whale lives in Antarctica as well. They migrate north in the winter months to find a little bit warmer waters. They are not too big. They can only be about 10 meters long and about 9 tons. So the largest one that we have that Miss Alex taught you guys about with her whales and dolphins lesson is the blue whale. So the blue whale is the largest animal on the planet. It can weigh 200 tons, which is approximately 33 elephants. and can be very long, can be 30 meters long. The Antarctic blue whale has the heart the size of a small car. So it's a very, very big animal. So we do have the blue whale as well that will visit Antarctica. So guys, these ecosystems are very, very cool, literally. But I think you guys already understand that they're definitely not doing too well right now. Again, if you've seen any type of planet documentary, when they talk about the Arctic or Antarctica, you know that the ice is disappearing very quickly due to climate change. And we've already learned about climate change with Miss Alex. All the things that we're doing, the factories, the plastic, the burning of the fossil fuels, the cars, the planes, we're putting all these different greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, carbon dioxide being one of them as well. And we're warming the planet. We're turning it into a greenhouse. And a greenhouse is a very, very warm place where you would normally grow plants, but not on this big scale. So we're making the planet much warmer, which is causing a lot of this ice to just disappear and melt away. So I'm going to read you guys a few different statistics about what's going on right now. So we lose, hold on one second. We lose Arctic sea ice at a rate of almost 13% per decade. Over the past 30 years, the oldest and thickest ice in the Arctic has declined by 95%. Scientists do think that the Arctic could be ice-free in the summers by 2040. So in 20 years, in the summertime in the Arctic, there could be no ice. That would not be good. So between Greenland has most of the ice, most of the land ice. So between them, Greenland and Antarctica, we have lost 6.4 trillion tons of ice between 1992 and 2017. So we've lost a lot of ice between the Arctic and Antarctica. Between both of these places, the Arctic and Antarctica, we are running about 81 billion tons per year of ice loss. So that's not good. Scientists say that in 2010, we had 475 billion tons of ice loss per year. So we're losing a lot of ice very, very quickly. And not only is it just bad because, we're just losing it, but think about all the animals that need the ice to hunt. Polar bears cannot hunt in the water. They cannot get those seals very easily in the water. They need ice. So if we're losing the ice, that means the polar bears can no longer hunt. That is a huge issue. So we're losing habitat. We're losing hunting grounds. That is not good at all. And also sea level rise. Miss Alex showed you guys an activity of the ice melting. So when the ice is already in the water, it doesn't change the sea level rise, but when it's on land, like when it's on Greenland, and when it's in Antarctica on that continent, all that land ice now is going into the water, which actually will raise sea level. And that's a very big issue. Scientists think that in the very near future, 400 million people could lose their homes due to sea level rise. And that's an immediate thing. Here in the Florida Keys, guys, if the sea level rises much more, we're going to have constant flooding. And pretty soon, we're not going to be able to live here in the Florida Keys due to sea level rise. That is a very, very big, big problem. A lot of South Florida as well would not be able, no one would be able to live in South Florida soon if we are continuing at this rate. So losing this ice is horrible for the animals. It's a loss of habitat, but it's also horrible for us because it can cause us to have a loss of habitat. We can lose our homes. Our homes will be underwater. Our roads will be underwater. Even now, guys, here in the Florida Keys, because of sea level rise, during high tides, our streets flood. All the water goes through the storm drains, and it's very bad to drive your cars through because it's salt water. So this is a very, very big problem. Again, if you guys want to learn more about this, I'm pretty certain Netflix, Disney Plus, they all have a bunch of different Planet Earth documentaries. Honestly watch all of them because they're all really cool. But if you want to learn more about the Arctic and Antarctica, watch those specific ones because they do a very good job. There's also a movie called Chasing Ice. I recommended you guys watch Chasing Coral during our coral lesson. It's on Netflix. Watch Chasing Ice as well. It's actually the first movie. It's the same director. Chasing Ice actually shows a lot of really interesting videos of these glaciers, everything breaking away and them calving. So This is a very big issue. There are a lot of things that we can do to help. Obviously, we just need to stop using so much fossil fuels. We need to stop driving our cars as much. We need to stop using plastic. We need to stop burning fossil fuels. We need to stop having these factories. All those little things will definitely make a big, big difference in our environment. So, guys, that is all for me today. Thank you for listening to me and listening to me talk about the Arctic and Antarctic.